Welcome to Coleman Report Live. I'm Bob Coleman. We're talking Main Street and the small business lenders that help it grow. Lance, good to see you. Joseph,
good to be here.
Dressed up, ready to hit.
Hey guys.
Look at that. You even shaved, boy. You trimmed.
Trimmed.
Ready for action.
Very good. Very impressive. Hey, let's go to the poll. A ton of news. Thank you for joining us. We respect your time, so let's get to it. Number one, what should you do when a red flag arises when analyzing the public PPP loan data? We should have said number one is call Lance, but we're not going to do that. Lance. Number one, contact the Inspector General to send them a referral. Do nothing because you have no dog in the fight, and you're just it's not your borrower. It's not you're not won't work for the lender, so just ignore it. Contact the lender and say what you guys may have a problem there, which I'm sure they would love that phone call, or call the borrower and say what's going on.
I love the 11%, Bob. No.
Well, is that a valid answer? Do you really? Do you
no. You in order to protect your guarantee. Well, it depends on who you are.
I'm talking about I'm perusing, and I'm just being nosy, and I'm going through the data, and I see something that doesn't look right to me.
Yeah,
but
I
don't have a dog in the fight.
This is just an American citizen looking through it, right?
Right.
The best thing for them to do is what everybody chose. Contact the Inspector General if you feel like it's right. That's also the best answer for a participant lender in the PPP loan program. If you become aware of fraud in a loan that you've done or any other loan,
yeah. I mean, that's
you need to contact.
Yes.
To protect your guarantee, you need to go ahead and contact the Inspector General.
Yeah.
It's most likely the scenario for guaranteed payment on a PPP loan that has fraud is you send it to the Inspector General and then you submit for guarantee purchase. There's not going to be a lot of servicing on those types of PPP loans. But I think the challenge, Bob, is, and like we talked about yesterday, there's so much of that information out, and I looked right before the show. There's yet another place that's advertising, see who got a PPP loan. Lenders, a lot of lenders are getting inundated with calls from people that, they're not a borrower, they're not, involved in it, saying, my brother Jim got a PPP loan and he don't even have a business. So
yeah, that came out. There was a rapper whose ex-girlfriend or the mother of his baby, and she said the same thing. He got $144,000. He doesn't employ anybody.
Well, and as a participant lender, you can't rely on hearsay. You need something that proves they were a fraudulent application. Then you're supposed to send it to the inspector.
I don't know, angry wives and angry.
Well, and the best response is, the best response as a participant lender when you get that phone call from an individual is, here's the SBA Inspector General's number. Call them.
Yeah, because I'm not going to talk. Yeah. I know you're getting a lot of that. And what's going to happen, and Chris Hearn alluded to this the other day, as we dig through this data, you're going to see more and more stories. There was one that I just ran a search for associations, because I know associations aren't eligible, and there was one association that I raised my interest. Said they got over $2 million. But I went and pulled, actually, Lance, I went and pulled the 990s, and sure enough, their wages last year were $12 million. So, okay.
Yeah. You cannot assume, and an individual cannot assume just because because the PPP loan program basically was opened up in the second round with independent contractors, Schedule C filers, to a lot of people. There are a lot of individuals that you might on the surface say, how did they get a PPP loan, that may have been a very legitimate candidate for a PPP loan.
I may have, there may be someone doesn't know what I'm talking about, is nonprofits. If you're a nonprofit, it is filed with the IRS, and you can go into the database and you can pull their tax returns. for any nonprofit, and they show the wages of the directors and all the wages, and so that's all public record.
Well, and the other thing that's kind of interesting, Bob, is how resourceful some of these people are. My personal cell phone. I've gotten phone calls from people wanting to report someone who should not have gotten a PPP loan.
No, I'm selling your phone number. That's
yeah. I'm not real sure how they got it, but
I sold it. They called me up and say, "Hey, here, give me your credit
well,
card."
as long as we collected $25 no, I'm just teasing.
No, I'm getting $50. I forget that. All right, number 2. When verifying cash equity injection on an SBA loan, how many month statements do you use? Do you require? Do you obtain? 1, 2, 3, or 6?
Well, I think the most important part of this question, Bob, is emphasizing that we do have to verify the source of the equity injection.
Yes.
We can't just say, oh, for instance, they're going to inject $50,000 and say, okay, that's good.
Okay. Go ahead, Lance. Tell me what the SOP is and tell me what your best practice is.
Well, the SOP pretty much dictates 2 months, but I like to get 3. 6 months may be a touch overboard, but and it may be difficult, but I'm not any 2, 3, or 6 are all correct in my book. 3 is what I think is the best practice. 2 is what the SOP states.
Lance, I come to you and I want to get a loan, and I deposit $100,000 in your bank, and it sits there for 12 months, and I'm using it. Are you going to go back and require for me to document where the original $100,000 came from, or is that sufficient?
No. If you've had $100,000 in the bank for 12 months, we're just going to take a print screen of your account for 3 months, and that will be proof of the source of equity injection.
Yeah, what we're concerned about is where the day before closing, $100,000.
Well,
yeah, we want to know where it came from. Yeah.
When you have a closing, Bob, and there's, like you said, $100,000 equity injection, and it's sudden day of closing, that's what we're trying not to happen.
No, you can't. You'll be heavily criticized. It includes refinancing same institution, or refinance, which is your lender's. Just let you know. And
when you have some instance, you have to meet the 6th opportunity, and it just reminds me, same institution debt, an incredible opportunity right now for small business lenders are an incredible opportunity for good small businesses to refinance debt. I know a number of different looked at financing during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And, those, stuff can be refinanced if it can cash flow savings for the borrower.
The rules are you cannot process it PL. Worried about
if it benefits the borrower, it's good. You're going to have to show a 3-year or life of loan payment history that shows on-time payment. I mean, you can't take somebody that's been 30 days past due 9 times and refinance same institution debt.
Usually what this is done in conjunction with a new loan where there's new money and you have a prior lien, but there's nothing wrong with it. If it makes sense, go ahead and do it. Just SBA is, their attitude is, hey, if it benefits the borrower, great. We just want full disclosure, and we don't want you, and we want to make sure that you're not transferring the loss from the lender to the government.
Yeah, one of the refinance questions, there's a series when you're underwriting any refinance. There's some questions that have to be answered, but one of the questions is you're not refinancing a debt that may have caused a loss for the previous lender. So that's a very, and other refinance question that's pretty critical from an eligible, there's several of them, but another critical one, Bob, is was the original purpose of the debt being refinanced eligible for an SBA loan?
That's key. That's key. Lance, what about refinancing other institution debt? I come to you.
They have some of the same requirements, but it's like I said, it's a great opportunity because there are people that went out and got Cabbage working capital loans during the pandemic, 25% interest rate, and I don't have anything against Cabbage because they can provide financing quickly, and sometimes the SBA product's not as quick as it should be. But there are opportunities for you as a small business lender to wrap all that stuff and provide significant cash flow savings for the small business.
Yeah, not to pick on Cabbage. Any of these fintech lenders, our friend Amit Kassar did a survey of he's a very good loan broker, advanced loan broker, and did a survey of his customers, and they don't care about rate, they care about speed.
Yeah.
So charge me 25%. As long as I get the money in by tomorrow and I can cover payroll, I'll do it. But that's in the heat of the moment. And now 6 months later, they can go to someone, they can go to you and say, hey, I need to clean this up. And there's nothing wrong with that. You can go ahead and do that.
Well, and I encourage any participant lender, the SBA Express program is a way you can develop an SBA product that it's not going to deliver next day funding like some of the fintechs can, but you potentially could use SBA Express, be totally compliant, and get a loan in the hands of a small business borrower in 2 or 3 weeks. And that may be quick enough.
Yeah, very good. Joseph, we were going through this, and my question to you is, I don't know if you were able to answer that, maybe Lance can, is we have a list of ineligible businesses for PPP. Were those rules in place for first draw? We know they were in place for second draw, but were they also in place for first draw, Joseph?
If I remember correctly, they were changing frequently on a daily basis and a weekly basis. So I don't have an exact answer, but I know that it was a free for all. It was a mad, crazy time, and the rules were being given to us as we were flying the ship. So Lance, you might have a better answer, but if you remember,
well, I
think changing quickly.
Eligibility for PPP, a good friend of mine, Jim, that I work with, we kind of laugh at times about who may have gotten a PPP, but in not talking about our institution, but just in general, the SBA eligibility requirements in the SOP 5010-6 apply, but then SBA came out and said no, certain nonprofits can get an SBA loan. Certain religious organizations, churches were able to get an SBA loan. Gambling facilities still could not get a PPP loan. The certain rules about felony crimes, there was some, and there was even gentlemen's clubs. SBA's had a rule that businesses of a sexual prurient nature could not get an SBA loan, yet there was a lawsuit and it opened it up, and some gentlemen's clubs were able to get an SBA PPP loan. So
Advance the next slide, Joseph. Go ahead, Lance.
Yeah.
But the eligibility rules were kind of interesting. Somebody located in a foreign country, no. Government entities, no. But churches and religious organizations were able to get PPP loans.
Okay, my question is, Lance, on this list, were some of these eligible for first round and that second round, or was this they were all ineligible for the first round, first draw?
Some were not eligible in the first round. The churches were eligible from the beginning. Shortly after PPP 1 started, the government entities, there were some it depends on some government, like municipal water. There were some municipal local government entities that were able to get PPP loans. I did a PPP loan for electric cooperative. There were some government entities, again, the churches and religious organizations were able to get them initially. The prurient sexual nature businesses were not able to, but then there was a lawsuit and they were able to get. Poor character, probably. That's lobbying was prohibited. So some of these were a no, but I think we've lived with SBA eligibility requirements for years, Bob, and a lot of us that have been in the SBA business for a long time kind of rolled over in our graves, so to speak, when some things were eligible, like nonprofits, religious organizations, and others.
This is a very, very interesting email we received. Joseph, who sent that? I don't have the first name.
Bill.
Bill sent this to us.
He's from an SBDC, yes.
What did he say, Joseph?
He said the major issue is that average monthly payroll is on the data. And this is the only public information that's on a federal website that has any data like this. So you can calculate not only average monthly data, you can break that out for the year and calculate the valuation of all the businesses. And that's a new type of data that we've ever seen. So yeah, that's what he brought to light. And I think that's a great point.
Yeah, he's saying, obviously some people have issues with that. And I don't know the backstory. I know that some of the data was just generic. We didn't disclose it hitting under 150. I never heard, other than until Monday came, I never heard that we had this data down on specific loans. I don't know how that happened. Joseph or Lance, do either of you know?
Not sure, Bob, but there's more information out there than most people would expect. Now, the monthly payroll is pretty easy to extrapolate. You can take the loan amount, divide it by 2.5, and make an assumption that that's the monthly payroll. And that would typically be the number found in SBA systems. So if you give somebody the loan amount, they can figure out what the monthly payroll is.
Hey, we appreciate the questions. So let's shift gears and go to these questions. Barry says, by the way, the eligibility rules were all in place, but some were added during round 1. So that clears that up. Din says, are businesses involved in lending eligible for the PPP loan program? I guess.
I'm sorry.
In terms of receiving. Are businesses involved in lending eligible to receive an SBA loan? Were they able to get one?
Shouldn't be, no. There was never an exception for that.
Russell says, there were, he came up with 4,600 loans to borrowers in the loan business, 2.7, and many were already forgiven. So Russell's been going through and doing his own research on that. Paul asked, you can finance third-party debt using express and delegated authority, correct? And that is correct, as long as it's not yours. And again, but we want to make this point, Paul, and we have a real quick glance. You are allowed to process some loans GP. Would this be one you would consider? And tell everyone why you would want to have a little diversity in your loan portfolio on processing some loans GP.
Well, I think SBA, when they look at a participant lender who has delegated authority, they want that lender to use delegated authority a majority of the time. But one of the measurements in evaluating a participant lender is how often they do use delegated authority, what percentage of the time. So having, when you have complicated eligibility issues, that you're not, this is my comment, Bob. As a delegated lender, if you have a complicated eligibility issue that you're not 100% certain on, you should submit a GP. And SBA expects you to have to do that some, even when you're a delegated lender, but they're certainly going to encourage you to process as much as possible as a PLP lender. But diversity in your portfolio, in loan size, in NAICS code, in method of processing, that's all important in being a great participant lender.
John asked the question, are merchant cash advances eligible for refi? There's a couple of issues in that. The one issue is these cash advances they're not charged an interest rate, they're charged a fee.
Yeah.
So what's your attitude about that, Lance?
I think it's possible. I think you're going to have to, go through those debt refi requirements, but it is possible.
Well, it's possible from an amortization standpoint because most of these cash advances, they want to be paid 6 to 9 months later. I mean, it can be a very nasty treadmill. So I think they are eligible, but your problem is, John, is you're going to say, okay, the cost is that borrower paid that fixed cost that's built into the loan. So if we pay it off, they're still going to pay that, and then we're going to charge interest. So I think you need to address that. Jackie asked a question near and dear to your heart, Lance. We had legal fees exceed $10,000, and we did not get an approval on our litigation plan. Should we go ahead and send in all the legal fees, or just limit the invoices to under $100,000? Excuse me.
I think you limit your invoice to 10. I mean, you can send them all in, but you're going to get $10,000.
And let's end on that. So what is the takeaway for that on litigation plans? Lance, what do we do?
Well, I mean, I think it's important for the participant bank, anytime you engage in litigation on a small business borrower, to develop a litigation plan, Bob, which includes a litigation budget. If that litigation budget is anywhere in the vicinity, I would say, Bob, anything north of $8,000, you probably should put a contingency in there, bump it up over 10, and send it in for approval so you don't miss it. Because I've been through too many liquidation cases, Bob. You think that it's going to be $9,000 litigation expenses, and when you finally get complete, it's $15,000. So
have you ever had one of those be denied by SBA?
I've never had a litigation plan denied. I've had an attorney rate get questioned.
Yeah,
but I've never had one just point blank denied. I've had SBA come back and say that rate for the attorney is too high in the designated area, and we had to find another attorney.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, very good. Hey, thanks for the questions. Thanks you all. We have a lot of stuff that we're waiting on to hit, and as soon as it hits, obviously we'll be all over it. But we're going to follow up on these PPP rules and everything else. And I hear rumors of July 15th. A lot of stuff's going to be. So we'll see what happens. Hey,
yeah,
thank you for joining us today for Coleman Report Live and for supporting America's Main Street, one entrepreneur at a time.
Have a great afternoon.
Take care, everyone.